Hello horror hounds, please forgive my voice, I'm a little under the weather, but I really wanted to squeeze one more film in under the wire for Occultober, and I really wanted it to be this one because after I'd announced the theme of the month, occult films for October, a couple of great channels asked me if I was going to include this. The Horror Appraisal, Sam and Evan High, and Fangs Out with your host Frank the Vamp. Hello Frank. As it happened, no, I had not seen the Lords of Salem, but when two great channels like that suggest it, I had to try and squeeze it in. As it turns out, it's out of print, so that's why the DVD cover to my copy of Lords of Salem is in French. I watched it a couple of nights ago. This is going to be a tricky movie to talk about. What I will be able to tell you straight off the bat is I honestly haven't been able to stop thinking about it for the last 2 days. Now, part of that is going to be to do with the infection that's currently infesting my body, giving me fever dreams, and I've been having Lords of Salem inspired fever dreams for the last 2 nights. I haven't been sleeping that well, but there has to be something in this film that's got under my skin so much. There's something there, but man, this is a frustrating film as well. This is a frustrating film to talk about. Rob Zombie's probably one of the most divisive horror directors working today. There are people that will defend him to the hilt and say that he's an auteur, and there's another camp who will trash him at every turn. And this film is just as divisive. There are people I've read online who call this film his masterpiece, and there are other people that say that it's boring, it has no story, it's just a rip-off of other greater stories and other greater directors and their styles. And I think both are true. There's quite clearly something in that film that has genuinely disturbed me. There are other things in this film that have genuinely frustrated me. But when when I find a film this problematic that I can't work out quite which bits have creeped into my subconscious and what doesn't quite work, and there's obviously something that works, and I can't put my finger on what works either. These are the films that I tend to become fascinated by, and over time I tend to hold in higher and higher esteem. So in all likelihood, in a year's time or so, I will probably be calling this Rob Zombie's masterpiece. He said himself he wanted this film to look as if Ken Russell had directed The Shining. And if you want to be really critical about Lords of Salem, he wears his influences on his sleeve so hard that yes, there is a Ken Russell montage freakout towards the end that's chock full of blasphemous images, but I kind of feel it's there to fulfill the Ken Russell quotient. There are tons of shots that are reminiscent not just of The Shining, but he's clearly aping Stanley Kubrick. There's bits of The Shining in there. There's elements from 2001 in there. I mean, the Ken Russell freakout ending is also quite similar to the scene where Dave Bowman goes through the Stargate as well. There's a teeny tiny bit of Eyes Wide Shut in this as well. There's a healthy dollop of Rosemary's Baby on the side. Anytime heroine Heidi goes outside in the autumnal colours and windswept exterior of Salem, it's Chris McNeil taking her little stroll through Georgetown in The Exorcist to the sound of tubular bells. At what point does that alchemy fuse into something new? What is Rob Zombie, or is this just a collage uh, of other different films and other different directors? Right, this is the Exorcist bit, and this is the Rosemary's Babies bit, and we're going to do a little bit of The Shining, and now a little bit of Ken Russell, even a little bit of David Cronenberg in there as well at the end, with that weird tentacly antichrist creature. And yet there's a feeling, there's a sensibility that this film exudes, even though it's a great big magpie of a movie, picking all the shiny bits from all the things that he clearly loves. There's a feeling that runs through this film that is all its own. That is the Lords of Salem. The story, such as it is a curious one. There are two strands to it. There's the past around the time of the witch trials, where a small coven of Satan worshippers are tried and put to death, and the head of that coven puts a curse on the bloodline of Hawthorne, the witch finder, who has burnt them alive. And there's the modern day story of Heidi, who is a DJ in Salem with a couple of her friends. They gabble and play lots of sound effects and play the kind of music that I guess Rob Zombie likes, and there's nothing wrong with that. And Heidi is given, or a record is left for her mysteriously from a group calling itself the Lords. And when she listens to it, she flashes back. She seems to go into a fugue state and either flashes back to the flashbacks that we see, or sees something else going on in her head. Other people in the town of Salem react to the music as well, and the film culminates ostensibly when the Lords are to come to Salem and perform a concert. But that's not really what it's about. Or it's kind of a little hook to hang these gorgeous visuals on, I think. It's more of a tonal piece than a twisty-turny plot of a movie. The plot is that thin, but the pictures are thick and meaty and gorgeous to look at. Some of them shocking, some of them eye-rolling, some of them really genuinely skating very close to the line where horror will become comedy. And I could completely, if the movie's not grabbing you, I could completely understand how some people would watch this and burst out laughing. I wouldn't say it's scary. There are no scares. There are no jumps. But it has stuck with me. It has stuck with me for the last 2 days, and I can't get past the ending. Specifically after the sort of Ken Russell freak out montage, which is all right, but it just seemed a little more random than the images Ken Russell himself would have put together. But after that, honestly, the transfiguration of Heidi, the sort of beatification of her as she becomes the sort of satanic analogue to the Virgin Mary, and her ascension, suddenly juxtaposed with that brief footage of her playing with her dog, has left me feeling incredibly sad. There's a melancholy that runs through this film that's really quite hard to shake, and a menace. The visions and the apparitions that haunt her are sort of all around her, and she's completely oblivious to them, rather than threatened by them, rather than them attacking her. They're in the background. They're watching her. They get closer and closer. We can see them, and she cannot see them, and that's a more insidious kind of horror. I found myself thinking about those images more if I walk into a darkened room or um, go go into the garden out the back, let the dogs out, and I'm out there. Safe spaces suddenly feel not quite so safe anymore because the horrors in this film, I wouldn't see them if one was here behind me now staring at me. I wouldn't see it. So the evil pervades the film almost to the point at the end where it's it's not evil. It just is. This is the world of this film, and it's not a happy world. I don't care that he's cast his wife in the lead role. He gets a lot of flack for that. She's obviously his muse. If you want to see more Rob Zombie movies, then you're going to have to put up with seeing Sherry Moon Zombie in them. He obviously draws inspiration and creativity from her. He obviously loves to film her. I got absolutely no issue with that. He also fills this film chock full of character actors and actors who have got form previously in the sort of horror areas. Dee Wallace being the Queen, Patricia Quinn. I'm going to forget the names. It's provides interesting roles for elder stateswomen of cinema who, in our youth obsessed age, probably aren't getting that many roles and these kind of interesting roles. And they're obviously having a blast with it. And they're the Rosemary's Baby neighbours. That I love the way that the film doesn't even pretend they're anything but. The landlady introduces her two sisters, and you see the first time you see the three of them together, you're like, oh, okay, they're that. And the film doesn't even bother to say anything other than it. So I need to say thank you to Sam and Evan at the Horror Appraisal. I need to say thank you to Frank the Vamp at Fans Out for suggesting I watch this, because I probably never would have if you guys hadn't have recommended it. But whilst I understand why people would hate this film, I think it's got something going on that whilst on the surface it looks like a patchwork quilt of other movies, I think it's possibly his most mature work. I think it shows that Rob Zombie is trying to stretch himself, try something new, even whilst falling back into the same old behaviours. With the casting and with the pastiching of other people's work. There's a weird kind of tension. He's got on display all of his worst habits, whilst at the same time using them more creatively than I've ever seen him do in another film before. It's a fascinating watch.